Access your free language gifts of the month right now. Here's what you're getting this month. First, the Making a Phone Call cheat sheet. Want to be able to talk on the phone in your target language? Then this conversation cheat sheet will help you do just that. You'll learn all the basic phrases, questions, and answers you'll need when making a call. Second, want to know the learning hacks, motivational tips, and success strategies for learning a language in 2020? Then you'll want this exclusive 52-page ebook. Download it now for free before we take it down. Third, words and phrases for the dentist. Learn how to schedule a checkup, talk about a toothache, and much more with this 1-minute vocab lesson. Fourth, can you talk about your zodiac sign? Then this next 1-minute lesson is for you if you want to learn. You'll learn how to say the 12 signs in your target language. Fifth, the 32 words you'll need for language learning. Noun, verb, adjective, sentence, grammar. Can you say these in your target language? If not, you'll want this quick 1-minute lesson. Sixth, free audiobooks for our members only. Unlock our huge library of language learning audiobooks. Save them to your device and listen and learn. They're yours to keep forever. And finally, the deal of the month. If you want to finally master the language with lessons by real teachers and our complete language learning program, take the 12-month challenge and get 12 months of Premium or Premium Plus at up to 45% off. So, to get your gifts and language learning resources, click the link in the description below. Download them right now before they expire.
First, you'll see an image and hear a question. Next comes a short dialogue. Listen carefully and see if you can answer correctly. We'll show you the answer at the end. Are you ready?
Een vrouw is aan het praten met een winkelbediende. Naar welke verdieping gaat de vrouw? Excuseer, waar bevindt zich de kleding voor vrouwen?
Op de 3e, 4e en 5e verdieping.
Op welke hangen de jassen?
Op de 4e verdieping. De lift bevindt zich daar ginds.
Op de 4e verdieping? Dank u wel. Naar welke verdieping gaat de vrouw? Een vrouw is aan het praten met een winkelbediende. Naar welke verdieping gaat de vrouw? Excuseer, waar bevindt zich de kleding voor vrouwen?
Op de 3e, 4e en 5e verdieping.
Op welke hangen de jassen?
Op de 4e verdieping. De lift bevindt zich daar ginds.
Op de 4e verdieping? Dank u wel.
I will introduce a bit of the historical development of Dutch and German. Then, I'll give some background information on how the pronunciation of the languages grew apart. After that, I will go deeper into specific differences between Dutch and German. The first specific difference I will be discussing is the spelling and cases. The second specific difference I will be discussing is related to grammar. Before we jump in, a small disclaimer. I am fluent in German, but while learning German I didn't quite get rid of my Dutch accent. So German audience, I'm sorry for butchering the pronunciation. Let's jump in. In ye good old times, around the time of the Roman Empire, the Proto-Germanic language was spread out north of the Roman Empire. Because when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Which, in this case, meant speaking Latin instead of the barbaric Proto-Germanic. North of the Roman border, so in Austria, Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, and in parts of Scandinavia, Proto-Germanic was the most important language. To the west, the Slavic and Uralic language sphere was situated. This is Finland, Poland, Hungary, down to the Balkans and east towards Russia. Now you know where the Proto-Germanic language sphere was located. So let's fast forward right to around the fall of the West Roman Empire. Around the fall of Rome is when the High German consonant shift slowly started to happen. This means that over the course of many generations the language changed. It took roughly 300 to 400 years. However, the High German consonant shift did not happen in Low German and Dutch. Low German? Where did that come from? Let me explain. Because of the standardization of German, Low German slowly became a dialect after the High German consonant shift took place. The High German became the Standard German. Low German is still spoken in the northern part of Germany, but the amount of speakers is dwindling. Just to clarify something about High German to avoid confusion. High German is called High German because it was spoken in the German Alps, up high. In German, it's called Hochdeutsch, which is also translated as Standard German. This may lead to some confusion, so make sure you have the right Hochdeutsch in mind when reading something on this subject. Low German is called Low German because it was spoken in the lowlands of Germany. To avoid confusion, in Germany they sometimes say Old High German to clarify which German they're talking about. Alright, the consonant shift takes place in 4 phases. Another 3 shifts happen which officially aren't categorized. Let's walk through them. The first phase saw 3 changes. The first one being that words ending with a p sound changed to a f sound. Let's look at the word ape as an example. In Dutch, it's aap, and in German, it's affe. The second change was that the final t at the end of a word became a s or z sound. To illustrate this, let's look at the word white. In Dutch, it's wit, and in German, it's weiß. The third change was when the letter K was replaced with a ch sound. Take for example the word belly. In Dutch, it's buik, and in German, Bauch. The second phase saw 2 changes. The first one being where the p sound became a f sound. The word horse illustrates this point perfectly. In Dutch, it's paard, and in German, it's pferd. The second change was with the letter t when it's not at the end of a word. It became a z or ts sound. For example, the word tooth. In Dutch, it's tand, and in German, it's Zahn. In the southern Austro-Bavarian dialects, a third shift happened, but this one is not found in Standard German, so that's a topic for another time. The third phase saw only 1 shift that affected Standard German. The d sound at the beginning of a word became a t sound. Look at the word part. In Dutch, it's deel, and in German, it's Teil. 2 other shifts happened, but they were restricted to Swiss German and some Austro-Bavarian dialects. Let's keep moving. Whether the 4th phase is officially part of the High German consonant shift is a debate, as one part also affected Low German and Dutch. This is the opposite of the first 3 phases, which solely affected High German. The 3 shifts include the th becomes a d. This shift also happens in Dutch and not in English. So bath in Dutch is bad, and in German it's bad. The last 3 shifts happen somewhere, sometime along or after the High German consonant shift. The first one is like the other shifts mentioned before. The other 2 only concern the pronunciation of letters. The first one is that the f or v sound becomes a b sound. This can be seen in the word love. In Dutch it's liefde, and in German it's liebe. The second shift, purely in pronunciation, is the G sound. In High German, they used to pronounce the G as in Dutch, the signature G sound. As Dutch was unaffected by this change, we still pronounce the words in the good old way. Take for example the verb to give. In Dutch we say geven, and in German it's geben. The last one is that the S and the Z are pronounced as sh. Take for example the word weak. In Dutch it's zwak, and in German it's schwach. The last one does get a bit vague, as in Dutch we also know the sh sound. Take for example the word shield. In Dutch it's schild, and in German it's schild. As I mentioned before, these changes started right from around the fall of the West Roman Empire and continued until somewhere in the 9th century, as then German was written down in books. This caused a degree of standardization of Old High German, which later became the Standard German. And that wraps up the phases. Having this shift in mind, you can see why German and Dutch are over 80% similar. Don't think that every word is similar though. There are a lot of false friends. The word winkel is such a false friend. If I say in Dutch, ik ga naar de winkel, I say, I am going to the store. If I were to literally translate that in German, it's something along the lines of Ich gehe zum Winkel. That will leave the average German puzzled. That is because in German, Winkel means angle. And if you're saying you're going to the angle, that probably would raise some questions. So, you may be wondering what the other differences are. Because of the High German consonant shift, a lot of words are spelled differently. This is not where it stops, however, because German and Dutch spelling rules continue to differ on various other aspects. Here are 3 examples where spelling rules differ. The first one, the spelling rules for capital letters. Generally speaking, Dutch follow the same spelling rules as English, with the exception of months and days of the week. They're not capitalized in Dutch. German, on the other hand, capitalizes each and every noun. A second one is that in Dutch, non-loan words never end with a double letter. For example, the verb to want in German is spelled as W-I-L-L, while in Dutch it's spelled as W-I-L. Only one L. The third one is about plurals. Plurals are easy in Dutch. They either end in en or with a s. In German, it's just a bit harder to grasp as nouns are declined in various different endings. And the rules are harder to learn. Having 3 genders does not make it any easier. Does that mean that spelling rules in Dutch are way easier? Sadly, it does not. It is sometimes joked that Dutch spelling rules have an exception to the exception of the exception of the exception of the main rule. This partly has to do with the Taalunie. This is an organization created by the Dutch and Belgian government to govern the spelling of the Dutch language. In the Netherlands, the Taalunie is the only organization that can change the official spelling rules that is used by the government and is taught in schools. This high degree of standardization means that sometimes awkward spelling of words remain in place for a very long time. Before we move on with differences in grammar, I'll mention a funny thing both languages have in common. Nouns are written together, no spaces. This leads to monster words in Dutch, like kindercarnavalsoptochtvoorbereiding werkzaamheden comitéleden. That's one Dutch word for Children's Carnival Parade Preparation Committee members. Or in German, they have the word Rindfleischetikeerungsüberwachungsaufgabenübertragungsgesetz. That's the German word for a law to delegate monitoring of veal labeling. Just as a side note, you won't find these words in a dictionary, as no one normally uses this word. They remain grammatically correct though. That being said, let's move on to grammar. When it concerns articles, Dutch only has two genders. This is still harder than the English with their the, but still much easier than the many different ones German have. There's also one indefinite article which is easy to remember. In Dutch, it's een. The negative indefinite article is always geen, always. The first gender is the common gender, either masculine or feminine. This group is known as de nouns. For example, de boom. This means the tree. As trees have the masculine gender in Dutch, it's a de noun. The second gender is neuter, known as het nouns. For example, het huis. This means the house. As houses have the neuter gender in Dutch, it is a het noun. There's one exception to nouns not having three genders. This is when referring back to nouns using the possessive. Then gender does play a role. I'll illustrate that with the following example. De raad beslist. Haar beslissing werd goed ontvangen. This literally translates to the council decides. Her decision was well received. Because Dutch only knows two genders, this means that Dutch has no cases. It's always de or het. Even with plural, we simply use de for that. No more der, die, oder das. Prepositions don't change a single thing. This does make life easier, as Germans sometimes don't even agree amongst themselves what gender should be assigned to a specific word. Take the word butter as an example. The southern Bundesländer and much of Switzerland and part of Austria say butter is masculine. The rest of the German-speaking population use it as a feminine word. As Dutch and German have the same ancestor language, this means that Dutch used to have cases, so one can sometimes pop up in old expressions or names. For example, the official name for the Netherlands in Dutch is Koninkrijk der Nederlanden. Translates to Kingdom of the Netherlands. Leaving gender and case behind us, let's talk about another grammatical point. Word order. The basic word order for Dutch and German and a bunch of other languages is subject, verb, object. In Dutch and German, however, we have something peculiar going on, and this is known as the subject, verb, object, verb order in more complex sentences. This is also known as the V2 word order. Let me illustrate this with an example. I am going to learn something about the differences between Dutch and German today. In Dutch, that would be: ik ga vandaag wat over de verschillen tussen Nederlands en Duits leren. In German, it would be: heute werde ich etwas über den Unterschied zwischen Niederländisch und Deutsch lernen. Those are very long sentences, so I'll break them down to make it easier to understand. In English, all the verbs are at the beginning of this sentence. I am going to learn ... In Dutch and German, only the conjugated word gaan in Dutch or werden in German is at the beginning of the sentence. The infinitive, leren in Dutch or lernen in German is at the end of the sentence. This is something typical of Dutch and German. The exact word order of the V2 position is slightly different between Dutch and German. When it comes to auxiliary verbs, the order in Dutch is auxiliary verb plus infinitive. In German, it's the opposite way around, infinitive plus auxiliary verb. I will illustrate this with an example. This is a television series that one should definitely watch. In Dutch, dit is een televisieserie die men beslist zou moeten kijken. En in German, das ist eine TV-Serie, die man unbedingt anschauen sollte. Note again how in Dutch the correct sentence is moeten kijken, and in German it is anschauen sollte.
How to improve your language and speak more through preparation. Do you think it's possible to speak more of your target language by preparing lines ahead of time? Today you're going to learn 1. Why you should prepare for conversations ahead of time, and 2. How you can prepare for conversations in your target language. If you've always wanted to speak more of your target language but didn't know how, this tactic will give you more to talk about. How to improve your language and speak more through preparation. Okay, let's get into part 1. Why you should prepare for conversations ahead of time. If you're a beginner, you can probably relate to this. When it comes to speaking, you tend to run out of things to say. And that's because you don't know enough of the language to express yourself. And that's where preparation comes in. You may think that the conversations we have in our daily lives are spontaneous, that you can't prepare for them. You're right to an extent. But imagine meeting someone for the first time. Both of you will go through some common questions and phrases, like, what's your name? My name is, where are you from? And how long have you been studying the language? As a language learner, you'll have these kinds of conversations with almost every native you meet, guaranteed. They'll always ask you about how long and how you've been learning. And even with your friends, some conversations start the same way. For example, you say things like, hey, how are you? How are things? How was your weekend? My weekend was good, and you? Let's say you went to a restaurant this weekend, and now you want to talk about it. Well, that allows you to prepare and learn some phrases like, I went to a restaurant. The restaurant had delicious food. The point is, some questions and phrases come up often in conversations, so it makes total sense to master them ahead of time. And you can always plan ahead and prepare for things you want to talk about. When it comes time to speak, you know what to say, how to respond, and you don't run out of talking points as quickly. So, how do you prepare? Let's jump into part 2. The first thing you can do to prepare is check out our 25 questions you need to know lesson series. This series is specifically designed to help you with the first-time conversations you'll have with native speakers. You'll learn the 25 most common questions and answers used in conversations. Just listen to the lessons, repeat out loud, then put what you learned to use. These will serve as talking points so you can keep your conversations going. Number 2, print out the curriculum for this lesson series so you can review all of the lessons at once. The curriculum gives you the lines and vocabulary used in all lessons up front, so you can use this to review key questions and responses. This will allow you to control conversations and ask questions instead of just having the native speaker ask you all the questions. In other words, you'll sound like a fluid, confident, and experienced speaker. Number 3, check out our printable conversation cheat sheets. This is another free resource that gives you lines and words for all kinds of topics. For example, talking about hobbies, your family, and much more. Number 4, ask yourself, what do you want to talk about? Come up with some topics, and for each topic, write out potential questions and phrases that would come up in a conversation. For example, if you want to talk about restaurants, you can have lines like, my favorite restaurant is, my favorite food is, what's your favorite restaurant? And then run these lines through a translation app. It won't be perfect, but it'll give you lines to use that you can correct later. Number 5, Look for lessons that are related to your topics with our lesson library. On our site, we have hundreds of lessons that teach you conversations. So if you're looking for lessons related to restaurants and food, you'll get all kinds of conversations that you can use for yourself. And number 6, if you're a Premium Plus user, get in touch with your teacher via My Teacher and try a conversation with them. They'll help you every step of the way, correct your writing, and give you the lines to use in a conversation. That way, you can prepare ahead of time, and when it comes time to speak, you'll know what to say. All right, everyone, here's a challenge for you. Yes, everyone watching this. Record a 30-second to 1-minute video or audio clip. Tell us, what's your language learning goal for 2020? If you do, you'll win a 1-month Premium Plus subscription. To submit, click on the link in the description. Sign up for your free lifetime account. Then fill out the form. Attach the audio or video file and press submit. We may feature you in next month's episode, so a lot of learners will see you and your progress and will hopefully get inspired to improve and master the language. To submit a recording, click the link in the description and follow the instructions on the page. So thank you for watching this episode of Monthly Review. Next time, we'll talk about how to start conversations, talking points for language learners. Most people don't like to hear this, but consistent, hard work is one of the biggest factors in your language learning success. The course or method you choose makes a difference too, but at the end of the day, you ride or die by the work you put in. The quantity of time spent studying language doesn't necessarily determine the quality of your study. Spending 3 hours a day watching movies doesn't help you learn much if you're not actively engaging with the language. In this video, we'll talk about 3 ways to actively engage your mind while studying a new language. Number 1, think of your brain as a muscle. You're probably familiar with the phrase, feel the burn, or maybe no pain, no gain. If you've been to your local gym recently, there's a chance you might have heard one of these phrases or seen them plastered on a wall. There's an idea in the world of sports and workouts that the discomfort you feel when running, pumping iron, or doing some other physical activity is what brings results. During a healthy workout, the muscles of the body are affected at a microscopic level. The discomfort you feel is your muscles being pushed to their limit. It's the limit pushing that strengthens your muscles so that over time, your performance increases. In the context of language learning, it's helpful to think of your brain as a muscle. Just as we need to push our physical limits when exercising, we also need to push our mental limits when learning a foreign language. Have you ever studied or practiced your target language in a way that left you tired or even exhausted? If so, you've experienced what it's like to push your brain out of its linguistic comfort zone. Number 2, practice active listening. One of the easiest ways to push your language skills is to practice active listening. Active listening is when you listen to someone speaking your target language and you do your best to understand what you hear. The best way to accomplish this is by using audio that you can't completely understand on the first listen. Preferably, you want to use audio that has subtitles or transcripts for you to double-check your understanding after you listen to it. You can use movies, YouTube clips, or even our language program, which has very useful transcripts for each lesson. During a practice session, you should listen to the audio several times. The first time around, it's okay if little to no words stick out to you. Simply make a mental note of any words or sounds you recognize. The second time you listen, you're likely to recognize a little more than you did the previous time. Expect similar results with your third or even fourth time listening. After you've hit the ceiling of words you can decipher, go ahead and look at the language subtitles or transcripts. Listen to the audio again, reading along with the text. Odds are that you will see words in the text you know, but didn't hear correctly. You're also likely to encounter words that are new to you completely. As you play back the audio and read along, try to guess what these words mean from the context of the words around them. After you've read along a couple times, feel free to look up the remaining unfamiliar words in a dictionary or translator app. This active listening exercise routine is a great way to increase your listening and comprehension skills while picking up some new vocabulary along the way. It also allows you to learn new words in context, which itself is a powerful method to help you retain what you study. Number 3, practicing with native speakers. Practicing with native speakers is the epitome of pushing your language skills. Using what you know to communicate in real time is where the rubber really meets the road. Try to connect with a native speaker on a weekly basis. Regularity is what makes the difference when you're learning a foreign language. If you live in a large metropolitan area, then there's a significant chance that there are some local native speakers nearby. Try hitting up a local language exchange or meetup group to make the necessary connections. If you're unable to find a practice partner locally, then you can take your search online. There are a number of sites out there that help you find and connect with other language learners from around the world. There are tons of language learners around the world who have learned or are learning a second language. You're likely to find someone who knows your target language and is looking to improve their own language skills as well. Learning a new language isn't always easy, but it's the discomfort that comes with pushing your ability in the language that produces results in your studies. Don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. The further away you get from your native language, the closer you'll be to attaining fluency. Also remember that language learning is in every way a lot like an adventure. There will be fun times and times when it feels like you're swimming up the proverbial stream. It's by keeping your head up long enough through these ups and downs that you will experience the priceless satisfaction that comes from learning a foreign language. Just keep moving forward. Let's be honest, it's difficult to learn a new language. If you're new to a language, it's going to take consistent and concentrated effort to start using the language fluently. However, this fact shouldn't discourage you. While learning a new language is hard, it's far from impossible. In this video, we'll outline 5 tips you can use to jumpstart your language learning. Follow these pointers to learn your target language in a way that is efficient and effective. Number 1. Limit your native language use when practicing. The idea here is that when you practice with native speakers, you do your best to refrain from using your native language. This is generally harder the less you know, but if you can manage to stick to this rule, you'll reap some huge rewards. If you commit to a no native language practice session, it's not going to be easy. Most likely, there will be some frustrating, if not painstakingly difficult moments where you either have trouble understanding the person you're talking to or you can't say what you want to say. It's precisely in these moments that your language learning muscles are built up to capacity. The process really isn't all that different from working out in the gym. Just replace the physical burn of lifting weights for the mental burn of thinking in a new language. In the end, if there's no pain, there's no gain. Obviously, this no native language rule doesn't have to be written in stone. There are times when it's more beneficial to break out of the target language box and have something explained to you in your native language. However, this should definitely be the exception rather than the standard. Number 2. Have set times to practice speaking throughout the week. Now that we've discussed a good way to practice speaking, let's delve a bit into when to speak. One of the best commitments you can keep while learning a new language is to set aside specific times to practice speaking the language on a weekly basis. Ideally, these speaking sessions are on set days at specific times and form part of your weekly routine. If you don't make it a point to set aside specific practice times, you run the risk of your language practice falling through the cracks of your busy schedule. I recommend writing down your practice times and hanging it somewhere you can always see it. You could also input the times into your phone and set an alarm. The point is to remind yourself of your commitment every day so that it doesn't fall by the wayside. Number 3, get picky about vocabulary. Whether you practice with a podcast, a friend at a coffee shop, or a teacher, you're going to run into a flood of new and unfamiliar vocabulary. Despite your best efforts, it's unlikely that you'll be able to pin down every new word or phrase you hear and study it later. Thus, you should pick and choose which new words you focus on. The defining quality of each new word you learn should be its practicality. The more useful a word or phrase is to you in a conversation, the more important it is that you learn it. Don't feel like you have to cram the entirety of your target language into 1 week of study. Take it one step at a time. A few practical words here, some more there. Before you know it, you'll see your vocabulary improve. Number 4, write and practice short monologues. This tip can be a lot of fun. Begin by selecting a topic you enjoy discussing. Then, simply write out a short monologue or speech on the subject in your target language. The first thing you'll notice while doing this will likely be the holes in your grammar and vocabulary. But when you try to write out your thoughts in a foreign language, you might inevitably hit roadblocks. You might not be able to think of a word or know how to formulate a specific idea or opinion yet. This can be great because these holes are the exact areas where you should focus your studies. You can bring up these problem areas in your next lesson or browse through your favorite language course or textbook in order to find the answer. The constant process of finding these language holes and filling them is what keeps you moving along the path to fluency. Once you finish your short text, it's a great idea to practice reciting it or even memorizing it. The memorization will help you internalize the new grammar and vocabulary you've learned. Reciting it will get your tongue and mouth used to the sounds. Number 5. Keep an up-to-date list on what you want to learn. Throughout your studies, you should always have a sort of language shopping list. As you practice and study, you will most likely come across things you'd like to be able to say, but don't know how to yet, especially if you follow our previous tip. Write this wish list down. It's one thing to learn the vocabulary you pick up via a course or podcast, both of which are great. It's a bit different when your vocabulary gets personal. Learn the words that matter to you, either because they're practical or because you simply find them interesting. The more relevant the vocabulary, the more likely you are to retain it. Some people might tell you it's impossible to learn a new language for whatever reason, but it's important to remember that the way you study and engage with a language greatly affects how quickly or effectively you learn it. Want to speed up your language learning? Take your very first lesson with us. You'll start speaking in minutes and master real conversations. Sign up for your free lifetime account. Just click the link in the description.